going to get, you know, the trailer with a deck. And almost always, they take the top apart. They're going to make a big project out of it, make a car hauler or something, and it just ends up coming like this. The entire trailer is pretty easy to rip down, but I'll tell you, the deck is one of the hardest things. And some of the tools that I use, and I always make sure that I have my handy dandy safety goggles and my earmuffs, is these tools. And the reason why, this is an old pruning shears that I got in a yard I found that was rusted like crazy. I put on my wire wheel, and it's really, really awesome. Works really great. I'll tell you something. If you're going to use PEX, there's lots of these pieces from the plumbing. Is take them apart and keep the pieces, because you're going to save money. You know me, the salvager. And what I do is I take my grinder, I put and I got smaller grinders with a rotozip, and I take these off so I save the pieces. So I'm going to be taking all that apart. It's not easy. I know a lot of pieces are rusted, but what I do to take off the wood, I have an assortment of different crowbars, long ones and short ones. This is the one I use the most often, is this bar thing, crowbar, and I've got my nice Eswin hammer and a homemade sledge that I can use to drive in to the pieces. What I did was I cut where the panels are with a rotozip, and this is the rotozip here. Yeah, I get basically blades that about this long, so I can cut into part of the, these are 2x3s, I'll be using 2x4s, and I cut within the panel, and I work my way down or in, and I take them off panel by panel. You'll come across these bolts that are bolted into the top of the plywood, as you can see. In some of these you can see that they put in the frame and then they put it in the top of the plywood here. So if you're having a problem with that, what I normally do is I'll come in with my grinder and I'll cut the bolt off just down here. If I'll bang it in to get some room, and I'll cut it off. So grinder, I've got my handy dandy hammer drill, which just a few minutes ago I took off the plumbing piece for the toilet, which I'm going to keep. So our idea is to recycle, and use what you can. So save, go piece by piece. Don't bend anything with a crowbar onto the frame where you end up bending the frame or causing problems. It's interesting, because they've got a furnace connector here, they have all the 2x3s going this way, but I'm going to be building it and have them go across, and everything that I have will be above the deck. It's interesting, when Bruce got this trailer, it was literally in really, really beautiful shape, but there was a couple of leaks in the roof, and what it did was it found a pathway into the floor, and he thought he was going to do a little repair. He lifted the top off, and the entire floor is baked. As you can see, as I'm moving back and taking panel off from panel, I usually cut between the 5/8 tongue and groove, the wood. You have to be really careful, because when you're cutting off the panels, for instance, there's a really good, in good shape gray water tank underneath here. As you can see, is where all the gray water goes, and it's something I'm going to keep. And then when you're cutting your panels off, you got to really watch where you're going. For instance, I even made this mistake. As I'm cutting this, I was taking my blade and I'm cutting away, and all of a sudden it feels like, why is there a knot in the wood, or what's going on here? Well, I nicked the actual tube frame a little bit in here, which basically destroyed my blade. So really, be careful of where you cut. In one of my videos, by accident, I was calling this a rotozip. I don't know why. I must have been in a drug-induced coma. What I've done is I've cleared the top of the deck with my wife. And what I'm doing is there's a gray tank there, but it ends prior to this seam. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each seam and cut through to the frame. So there's pieces of those cross members underneath here. These are 2x3s. So I'm going to cut them off and take each section off piece by piece. So I'll be taking this seam and I'll be cutting it from that side on here. One of the things I've done, which seems to make it work easier with your reciprocating saw, is I sort of put in the blade backwards, and because there's the sled part here. Okay, so when I'm pulling it this way, it's sort of easier for me to get into the wood, right? And also this side here has more of a place to grip, so when I have it going, it's a lot easier for me to bring it along and skate with it. One thing I've also done with this one is there used to be a it was a safety that you had to press, but I use it so often that I just took it out and I hot glued it in so that it always works. And I went on the inside and I circumvented the wiring so that it would just go when I press it. So, and I use a 4-inch blade, and it works really good. So I'm going to cut the rest of these seams, and then I'm going to pull each section off and then cart them into the dump trailer. With a reciprocating saw, there's always, you know, I do it myself. I'll raise it a little bit too high, and we're going to show you how to use it, and you end up buckling it. Now, I bought a whole bunch of them. They were normally for 20 some odd bucks. I got them at Canadian Tire for like $9.99 on sale. But I could go through a slew of blades very, very, very quickly, and I don't, because what am I, Jada? I'm cheap. So when I buckle it, I don't throw it away. What I do is I take my firm grip thing. I'll come to my anvil, which I got from a railroad tie here by the railroad, and I'll tap it so it straightens out a bit. And I've got, again, a straight. I tap it on the outside instead of where the saw blades are. I also got myself a nice little what do you call it, file, and I will take, because the end always seem to go on me, and I will take this file. Has a nice kind of angle to it, a wedge to it, and then I'll give it a couple of to sharpen the blades, eh? I did the top a few more times because it wears out very quickly. So basically I have a new blade. I think it's a little bent here. The reason I bang on it and instead of bending it most of the time is it does do a better job. So it's nice, basically nice and straight. I think I went too far. So I got a nice straight blade again. So now I'm going to show you how to use the reciprocating saw. You ready? So one of the things you have to remember is that when a reciprocating saw is in use, it vibrates a lot. And the blade that you put in there most certainly will start to come a little bit loose. Now I'm putting this, most people put their blades this way, okay, but because I'm hitting the deck and because I want a good grip, this is I got this reciprocating saw from Rona. When I put it in, inside here, there's a little thing that sticks out, if you can see it. Okay, and that goes into the hole. You can feel it when it goes in, and then you grab your Allen key, get it into the notch. You've got a slot here. See, it already came out. Okay, and then you tighten it. When I finish the tightening process, well, it was really loose, I always, like it's forward or back, I always lean it back and then give a final snug to it, because that's the way it's going to end up because of the pressure. It may look a little off, but that's the way it's going to be. So it's nice and tight, and every once in a while check that it remains tight. So here you go. Okay. And that's the way I'm going to be cutting. Now you have to watch how you cut, because when you do so, if you come up above the wood itself, it's going to buckle and end up getting bent, like when I was showing you what happened to me. So I'm just going to show you that when I'm bringing it back, I keep the sled part in the that's my guide always against the wood, and I don't come too far up. I make sure that I have a good cutting distance. So I'm just going to show it to you for a second. As you can see, I took the bolts off, and when you take the bolts off, sooner or later, the steps are going to fall on your toes. Good thing I have steel toe boots on, but it got my arch, and that hurt. So yeah, I took the bolt off earlier, and I guess the rust, that hurt. Anyway, so just to show you, and notice I sort of work it in. Now I'm on purpose, I'm going to pull it up a little bit, and I'll show you what happens when it buckles and you clear too much, when you come up too much, and what happens. You end up hitting something, and the first thing that's going to happen is your nice little saw blade is going to bend like what you saw earlier when I fixed it. So what we're going to do, because it's so tightly packed in there, we're going to cut a line in the middle. My wife's going to, and bring it on the edge so we can bring both sides up. Okay, so my wife's going to try and make a cut across there. She's going to keep the skate part down to the ground so it doesn't buckle, and she's going to make a cut between the two vents so we can pull this thing apart. There's a few things I do that are not really that safety conscious. I should have really a long sleeve shirt, which I do most of the time. But I always, because of the frequency of these grinders is so high, that I always have, my safety glasses and earmuffs on. Because of the frequency, it's even better to put the foam type you put in your ears. But I really want to talk about the bolts. The bolts have to come off prior to. There are bolts also on the edges that need to come off. I try to pull, some of these are just into the wood, but some of them, like the lag screws or lag bolts, whatever you want to call them. But remember, grinders are dangerous. They buckle, they cut back, they can drop out of your hand. Always try and get a grinder. This is an old DeWalt that I've had for years. I've even changed the brushes myself. I like this because it has, you got to flip it down and the trigger starts it. Okay, and when you let it go, it shuts off. And I keep my hands on the end, not too close to here, so I don't end up cutting myself. Okay. So I try to keep a steady hand. I don't jiggle my grinder too much when I do the cuts, so that, you know, I can have a straight fluid cut. I think I found a lag bolt. I don't know which one it is, but yeah, this thing is really tight in here. So I mean, it seems that there's some screws sitting in it. So I gotta go and find them. You don't want to crank too much on the ends. The ends are, as you can see, they're a little bit fragile. So to torque on them with the wood is not the greatest idea because you'll bend them. And what I'm going to be doing with this anyway is I'm going to be getting angle iron on this side and bring it out a little bit more so I have an exact 8 feet, and I'm going to reinforce them. But you know, if these are torqued too hard, they will bend up or down, and as I'm building it, if anything is not perfectly level, I'll grab a jack or something and I'll be re-leveling it. I went around and did a bunch of bolts. I came back here and the wood's technically on fire. So it's a good thing to watch out for. I mean, we've had generally a dry climate this year, and the surface of our yard is mostly chips from the chip trucks. So I think it's a good idea if I carry some water with me, and then I'll just grab a bucket or something and splash it. To start a fire and have the whole department out here. So yeah, it can get hot. That was a great example of what to do and what not to do, or what to be prepared for. Well, we've done the deck, and we're going to go on to the next section on welding, and I'm going to bring some people in about structure and support, and what's needed and what's not needed. We're going to be going with our 2x4s this way. A lot of what we've noticed with trailers, the 2x are going this way so there can be ventilation and wiring, but everything that we're going to do is going to be on the inside. So I hope you liked our part about ripping down the deck and some of the tools that were used. So till next time, enjoy.